Marcus pulled up to his new house, a small, sunshine yellow bungalow with a neatly trimmed lawn. He grinned. This was it. A fresh start. After years of city living, he craved peace and quiet, a place where he could finally relax and maybe even grow a prize-winning tomato or two. He popped the trunk of his car and began unloading boxes labeled, books, kitchen stuff, and, important, probably. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Quiet streets lined with mature trees, kids riding bikes, and the gentle hum of lawnmowers in the distance. He imagined himself sipping lemonade on the porch, waving to friendly neighbors. Little did he know, his dream of suburban bliss was about to be interrupted. He wrestled a heavy box of books toward the front door when he heard a voice. "Excuse me." Marcus turned to see a woman marching toward him. She had short, tightly permed hair, large glasses perched on her nose, and a clipboard clutched in her hand. She wore a crisp, floral print dress and sensible walking shoes. "Yes?" Marcus asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm Karen," she announced, puffing out her chest. "HOA secretary. And I haven't seen you before. Are you aware that we have strict rules about moving in? No excessive noise after 8 p.m., lawns must be mowed weekly, and garbage cans must be kept out of sight." Marcus smiled politely. "Yes, I read the HOA guidelines. I'm Marcus. I just bought the house." Karen narrowed her eyes. "Bought it? I haven't seen any paperwork. And I make it my business to know everything that goes on in this neighborhood." She tapped her clipboard impatiently. "Do you have any identification? Proof of ownership, perhaps?" Marcus was taken aback. I don't have it on me right now. It's all in the boxes. I just got here." Karen's lips pursed into a thin line. "I'm going to need to see some identification before you start unloading any more of your belongings. We can't just have anyone squatting in our lovely neighborhood." She made air quotes with her fingers when she said, "lovely." Marcus felt his cheeks flush with annoyance. This wasn't the friendly welcome he had imagined. "Look, I assure you, I own this house. I can get the paperwork later. Can't we just be neighborly?" Karen remained unmoved. "Until I see proof, I'm reporting this. Squatting is a serious offense, young man." She turned on her heel and marched back toward her own house, muttering something about property values and riffraff. Marcus stared after her, dumbfounded. This was going to be interesting. Marcus watched Karen disappear into her house, a knot forming in his stomach. He really didn't want to start his new life with a feud. He sighed, deciding to unpack a few essential boxes while he tried to locate his briefcase with all the important documents. But first, he needed to understand Karen better. This wasn't a normal neighborly greeting, it was intense. He peeked over at her house. It was meticulously maintained, with perfectly trimmed hedges and a pristine lawn. A small sign in the window proclaimed, "Neighborhood Watch Captain." He walked over to his car, grabbed a bottle of water, and sat on the porch steps. He thought back to the online meeting where he'd first encountered Karen. She was the self-appointed guardian of all things proper, quick to point out any violation of the HOA rules, no matter how minor. He remembered her complaining about a neighbor's slightly overgrown rose bushes and another's garish holiday decorations. Karen saw the world in black and white, with strict rules and regulations for everything. She thrived on order and control, and anyone who threatened that order was immediately suspect. He chuckled humorlessly. He was now officially suspect. Marcus imagined Karen's life. Probably organized down to the minute. Color-coded closet, alphabetized spice rack, and a meticulously kept record of every perceived infraction in the neighborhood. He wondered if she had a secret lair filled with HOA rule books and surveillance equipment. He realized that dealing with Karen wasn't just about proving he owned the house. It was about understanding her, figuring out what motivated her, and finding a way to bridge the gap between their very different worldviews. He decided that tomorrow, he would bake a pie and offer it to her as a peace offering, paperwork in hand. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from next door. He hesitated, then clicked on it. The first post he saw made his blood run cold. It was a picture of him, taken from Karen's window, with the caption, "Possible squatter alert. Unidentified individual seen unloading boxes at 14 Maple Street. Does anyone recognize this person? Keep an eye on your property." The comments were already pouring in. "Looks suspicious. Probably up to no good. We need to protect our neighborhood." Marcus closed his eyes, a wave of frustration washing over him. The pie idea was officially off the table. This was going to be a much bigger challenge than he anticipated. The next door post felt like a slap in the face. Marcus scrolled through the comments, his heart sinking with each new message. He couldn't believe how quickly people were willing to judge him based on Karen's unfounded accusations. He considered posting a response, explaining the situation, but he hesitated. Would anyone believe him? Karen had clearly established herself as an authority figure in the neighborhood, and her words seemed to carry a lot of weight. Anything he said might just be seen as the desperate plea of a squatter. He closed the app and took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. He decided to focus on finding his briefcase, hoping the paperwork inside would be enough to clear his name. As he rummaged through boxes, he thought more about Karen. He needed to understand what made her tick. She wasn't just a busybody, she was a force to be reckoned with. What was it about maintaining order that was so important to her? Perhaps it stemmed from a deep-seated fear of chaos. Maybe she felt that without strict rules and regulations, the neighborhood would descend into anarchy. Or maybe, just maybe, it was about power. Being the HOA secretary gave her a sense of control, a feeling of importance that she might not have in other aspects of her life. He remembered seeing her at the last community picnic. She was constantly buzzing around, clipboard in hand, making sure everything was just so. She corrected the placement of the picnic tables, reprimanded a child for running on the grass, and even measured the distance between the hot dog station and the beverage table. It was almost comical, but also a little sad. Karen's entire identity seemed wrapped up in her role as HOA secretary. It was her purpose, her passion, her reason for being. And now, Marcus, the new guy, was threatening that. He represented change, disruption, the unknown. And Karen, it seemed, was determined to protect her little world from any outside influence. He finally found his briefcase tucked away in a box labeled "Office." He flipped it open, relief washing over him as he saw the stack of documents inside, the deed to the house, his driver's license, and a copy of the HOA election results. He smiled grimly. He had everything he needed. Now, he just had to figure out how to use it. He went back to his phone. It was time to fight back. Marcus crafted a carefully worded response on Nextdoor. He posted a picture of himself holding the deed to the house, his face clearly visible. "Hi neighbors," he wrote. "I'm Marcus, the new owner of 14 Maple Street. I understand there's been some confusion about my presence here. I assure you, I am not a squatter. I recently purchased the property and am excited to be part of this community." He continued, "I apologize for any inconvenience this misunderstanding may have caused. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I believe in open communication and building positive relationships with my neighbors." He hit post and waited, his stomach churning. The response was immediate. Some neighbors apologized for their hasty judgments. Others remained skeptical, echoing Karen's concerns about property values and neighborhood safety. A few even accused him of photoshopping the deed. Marcus sighed. He knew it wouldn't be easy to win everyone over, but he was determined to try. He decided to go door to door, introducing himself and showing his paperwork to anyone who was willing to see it. The first few houses were encouraging. People were polite, listened to his explanation, and seemed genuinely relieved that he wasn't a threat. He even got a few offers of help with unpacking. Then he approached Karen's house. He hesitated for a moment, then walked up to the door and rang the bell. Karen opened the door, her eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" she demanded. Marcus held up the deed. "I just wanted to show you that I am the rightful owner of 14 Maple Street. I hope this clears up any confusion." Karen glanced at the document, her expression unreadable. "That doesn't prove anything," she said dismissively. "Anyone can print something like that off the internet." Marcus's patience began to wear thin. "I also have my driver's license and other forms of identification. I'm happy to show them to you." Karen folded her arms. "I've already filed a formal complaint with the HOA. It's out of my hands now." She slammed the door in his face. Marcus stood there for a moment, stunned. He couldn't believe her level of stubbornness. He realized that Karen wasn't just concerned about property values or neighborhood safety. She was on a mission to discredit him, to prove that she was right and he was wrong. And she wasn't going to back down easily. He checked his phone and saw his own social media. He was being attacked from every angle, and he knew it was all Karen. He had a feeling this was just the beginning. Marcus decided to attend the next HOA meeting. He figured it was the best way to address Karen's accusations and present his side of the story to the entire board. He spent the next few days preparing his case, gathering all the necessary paperwork and drafting a statement. He also started reaching out to other neighbors, trying to build support and counter Karen's narrative. He learned that many people were unhappy with the way the HOA was being run. They felt that Karen and the other board members were too focused on petty rules and regulations and not enough on addressing important issues like neighborhood safety and property maintenance. He discovered that Karen had a history of conflict with other residents. She had been involved in several disputes over minor infractions, often escalating the situations unnecessarily. Some neighbors even described her as a bully who used her position to intimidate and control others. The night of the HOA meeting arrived, and Marcus walked into the community center, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. The room was packed with residents, many of whom were glaring at him. Karen sat at the head table, looking smug and self-assured. The meeting began with the usual formalities, but Marcus could feel the tension in the air. Finally, the HOA president, a mild-mannered man named Mr. Henderson, called Marcus's name. "Mr. Miller," he said, "we have received a complaint regarding your residency at 14 Maple Street. Ms. Davis has expressed concerns about the validity of your claim of ownership." Marcus stood up and addressed the board and the audience. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak," he said. "I understand there have been some concerns raised about my residency. I want to assure everyone that I am the rightful owner of 14 Maple Street." He presented his paperwork, including the deed, his driver's license, and a copy of the sales agreement. He explained the circumstances of his move and apologized for any inconvenience the misunderstanding may have caused. Karen interrupted him, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's all very well, Mr. Miller," she said, "but we still haven't seen any proof that you are who you say you are. And frankly, I find your story very suspicious." She turned to the audience. "Are we really going to let this stranger into our neighborhood without knowing anything about him? Are we willing to risk our property values and our safety?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Marcus realized that he had an uphill battle ahead of him. Karen had successfully poisoned the well, and it would take more than just paperwork to change people's minds. He decided to reveal what he really knew about Karen and the board. He cleared his throat. "Actually, Ms. Davis," he said, "I have some concerns of my own." He paused for effect. "Concerns about the way this HOA has been managed for the past several years." Karen's eyes widened. She knew what was coming. The atmosphere in the room changed palpably. This was more than just a squatter dispute. This was a power struggle. For months, Marcus continued, his voice gaining confidence, I've been investigating the HOA's financial records. What I've discovered is deeply troubling. He paused, pulling out a thick folder filled with documents. I found evidence of questionable expenses, inflated contracts, and a general lack of transparency in how our money is being spent. He projected a spreadsheet onto the screen behind him, highlighting several suspicious transactions. For example, he said, pointing to one line item, this landscaping expense, $5,000. Does anyone know what this was for? Because I can't find any record of any landscaping work being done. He went on to detail other irregularities, each one more shocking than the last. He showed how the board had approved expensive renovations to the community center without seeking competitive bids, and how they had awarded contracts to companies owned by their relatives. The room was silent, everyone listening intently. Even Karen seemed stunned, her usual composure replaced with a look of panic. These are serious allegations, Mr. Miller, Mr. Henderson said, his voice trembling. Do you have proof to back them up? I do, Marcus replied, holding up the folder. I have copies of invoices, contracts, and bank statements. I'm happy to share them with anyone who wants to see them. He then revealed a crucial piece of information. Furthermore, he said, I've already contacted the authorities and filed a formal complaint. They are currently investigating these matters. A collective gasp went through the room. Karen stood up, her face red with anger. This is outrageous, she shouted. These are lies. He's trying to destroy our reputation. I'm not trying to destroy anyone's reputation, Marcus said calmly. I'm simply trying to ensure that our money is being spent responsibly and that this HOA is being run with integrity. He turned to the audience. I believe it's time for a change, he said. It's time for new leadership, new transparency, and a new commitment to serving the best interests of this community. He paused, taking a deep breath. That's why I'm announcing my candidacy for HOA president. The room erupted in applause. People were cheering, clapping, and congratulating him. They were finally seeing through Karen's facade and recognizing the need for change. Karen stormed out of the room, muttering about lawsuits and slander. Mr. Henderson looked completely overwhelmed. The meeting was adjourned, but the real battle was just beginning. The election was coming up, and Marcus knew he had a lot of work to do. He had to convince the majority of the residents that he was the right person to lead the HOA. He had to expose the full extent of Karen's mismanagement. And he had to protect himself from her inevitable retaliation. The stakes were higher than ever. The truth was, Marcus hadn't just stumbled upon the HOA's financial irregularities. He'd moved into the neighborhood specifically to expose them. His aunt, a longtime resident of Maple Creek, had confided in him about her suspicions regarding the HOA's finances. She was elderly and felt intimidated by Karen and the other board members, afraid to speak out. Before she passed away, she begged Marcus to help. Marcus, a forensic accountant by trade, had promised her he would. He spent months poring over the HOA's publicly available documents, and what he found confirmed his aunt's worst fears. There was a clear pattern of mismanagement and potential fraud. That's when he decided to sell his city apartment and buy a house in Maple Creek. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He'd have to gain the trust of the community, expose the truth, and fight against powerful vested interests. But he was determined to honor his promise to his aunt. ****. Flashback. The HOA election was held 3 weeks after the explosive meeting. The atmosphere was tense. Karen and her supporters had launched a smear campaign against Marcus, spreading rumors and lies about his past. They accused him of being a con artist, a troublemaker, and even a criminal. Marcus and his supporters worked tirelessly to counter the negative propaganda. They went door to door, sharing the evidence of the HOA's mismanagement and explaining Marcus's vision for a more transparent and accountable community. The day of the election arrived, and the community center was buzzing with activity. Residents lined up to cast their votes, their faces etched with anxiety and anticipation. Marcus stood outside the polling place, greeting voters and shaking hands. He could feel the weight of the community's hopes and expectations on his shoulders. As the polls closed, the votes were counted. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, Mr. Henderson announced the results. "The results are in," he said, his voice barely audible. "And the new HOA president is Marcus Miller." The room erupted in cheers. Marcus's supporters were ecstatic, hugging and congratulating him. He had won by a landslide. Karen and her supporters looked defeated and dejected. They knew that their reign of power was over. Marcus stepped up to the microphone, his heart filled with gratitude and determination. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for your trust and your support. I promise I won't let you down." He knew that the real work was just beginning. He had a lot of promises to keep, and a lot of wrongs to right. But he was ready for the challenge. He was finally in a position to make a real difference in the community. End flashback. Back in the present, Marcus knew the election was only the first step. He still had to deal with Karen, who was sure to fight back with everything she had. But he was ready for her. He had the truth on his side, and he had the support of the community. He wouldn't let her win. The first thing Marcus did as HOA president was to call for a complete audit of the HOA's finances. He hired an independent accounting firm to review all the records and provide a detailed report of their findings. Karen and her remaining allies on the board fought him every step of the way, but Marcus had the support of the community, and he was able to push through his agenda. He also implemented new rules and regulations to ensure transparency and accountability. All contracts would now have to be competitively bid, and all financial transactions would be subject to public review. The audit took several weeks, but the results were even more shocking than Marcus had anticipated. The accounting firm uncovered a web of fraud and corruption that went far beyond mere mismanagement. They found evidence that Karen and other board members had been embezzling funds, accepting kickbacks, and using HOA money for their personal expenses. The report was presented at another open HOA meeting, and the atmosphere was electric. The residents were outraged, demanding that Karen and the other corrupt board members be held accountable. Marcus addressed the audience, his voice filled with anger and determination. "This is a betrayal of trust," he said. "These individuals have abused their power and stolen from our community. They must be brought to justice." He announced that he was turning the audit report over to the authorities and that he would fully cooperate with their investigation. He also called for the immediate resignation of Karen and the other board members who were implicated in the scandal. Karen and her allies refused to resign, claiming that they were innocent and that the audit report was a fabrication. They launched another smear campaign against Marcus, accusing him of being a power-hungry tyrant who was trying to destroy their lives. But this time, their efforts fell flat. The evidence against them was overwhelming, and the community had lost all faith in them. One by one, they were forced to step down from their positions. With Karen and her allies out of the way, Marcus was able to appoint new board members who were committed to serving the best interests of the community. He also implemented a series of reforms to prevent future corruption and ensure that the HOA was run with integrity and transparency. The investigation into the HOA's finances continued, and eventually, Karen and several other board members were arrested and charged with multiple felonies. They were tried, convicted, and sentenced to prison. Marcus had kept his promise to his aunt. He had exposed the truth, brought the corrupt officials to justice, and restored integrity to the HOA. But he knew that his work was not yet done. He still had to rebuild the community's trust and create a more positive and inclusive environment for all residents. He knew that would take time and effort, but he was determined to see it through. The neighborhood was finally on the road to recovery, and Marcus was ready to lead the way. With Karen and her cohorts facing serious legal consequences, the atmosphere in Maple Creek began to shift. The cloud of suspicion and animosity that had hung over the neighborhood started to dissipate, replaced by a sense of hope and optimism. Marcus, now firmly established as a respected leader, focused on rebuilding trust and fostering a stronger sense of community. He organized neighborhood events, like block parties and potlucks, to bring people together. He also established a community garden, where residents could grow their own fruits and vegetables. He made sure that all HOA meetings were open and transparent, encouraging residents to participate and voice their concerns. He also created a website and a social media page for the HOA, where residents could access information and communicate with each other. One day, Marcus was working in the community garden when he saw a young boy struggling to plant a tomato plant. He walked over to help him. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Billy," the boy replied shyly. "Well, Billy," Marcus said, "planting a tomato plant is easy. Just dig a hole, put the plant in, and then cover it with dirt. And don't forget to water it." Billy smiled. "Thanks, Mr. Miller." Marcus helped Billy plant the tomato plant, and then they talked for a while about gardening and other things. Marcus realized that he was finally starting to feel like he belonged in Maple Creek. He had made friends, earned the respect of his neighbors, and created a positive impact on the community. As he walked back to his house that evening, he saw Karen's house. It was empty and abandoned. The windows were boarded up, and the lawn was overgrown. He felt a pang of sadness for her. She had made so many mistakes, and she had paid a heavy price for them. He knew that he couldn't change the past, but he could learn from it. He could use his experience to create a better future for Maple Creek. He was determined to make sure that what had happened to Karen never happened again. He reached his house and went inside. He sat down on his porch and watched the sunset. The sky was a beautiful shade of orange and pink. He smiled. He was finally home. He was finally at peace. The neighborhood was safe, secure, and well run. He had done it. The phone rang. It was the local police department. They had caught Karen trying to sneak back into her old house. Marcus sighed. It seemed like the drama was never truly over. But he was ready for whatever came next. He was Marcus Miller, the HOA president of Maple Creek, and he was here to stay. He answered the phone, ready to face whatever new challenge awaited him. The conversation continued late into the night, but Marcus never wavered in his commitment to the community. He knew that the fight for justice was never truly over, and he was prepared to continue the battle for as long as it took. The police officer on the phone explained that Karen had been caught attempting to retrieve personal belongings from her former residence. It seemed she was struggling to accept the reality of her situation and was desperately clinging to the life she once knew. Marcus authorized the police to issue a stern warning and ensure she understood the consequences of trespassing. He hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of pity and resolve. He knew he couldn't let Karen's actions derail the progress he'd made in Maple Creek. He had to stay focused on building a better future for the community. The next morning, Marcus received a visit from Mrs. Gable, an elderly woman who lived across the street from Karen's old house. She was visibly shaken. "Mr. Miller," she said, "I saw Karen last night. She was lurking around her property, muttering to herself. I'm afraid she's going to cause trouble again." Marcus assured Mrs. Gable that he would take care of the situation. He contacted the HOA's attorney and asked him to explore legal options to prevent Karen from harassing the community. The attorney advised Marcus to seek a restraining order against Karen. He explained that if Karen violated the order, she could be arrested and face further legal penalties. Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to resort to such drastic measures, but he knew he had to protect the community. He decided to proceed with the restraining order. The process was difficult and emotional. Marcus had to testify in court, describing Karen's past actions and explaining why he believed she posed a threat. Karen, who was present in the courtroom, vehemently denied the allegations, claiming that Marcus was persecuting her. Despite her protests, the judge granted the restraining order. Karen was ordered to stay away from Maple Creek and to refrain from contacting any of the residents. Karen was devastated. She couldn't believe that she had been banished from the community she had once controlled. She left the courtroom in tears, her dreams of power and authority shattered. Marcus felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness. He knew that Karen had brought this upon herself, but he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. She had lost everything, her home, her reputation, and her freedom. He hoped that one day, Karen would find a way to rebuild her life and make amends for her mistakes. But for now, he had to focus on the present and on the future of Maple Creek. He had a community to lead, and he was determined to do it well. The setting sun cast long shadows across Maple Creek. It was time to get back to work. There were always more tomatoes to plant. There were new families moving in. There was a neighborhood to run, and he was the man for the job. Marcus smiled. Everything was going to be all right. With Karen officially out of the picture, Marcus could finally focus on his vision for Maple Creek. He knew that rebuilding trust wouldn't happen overnight. It would take time, patience, and a genuine commitment to serving the community's best interests. He started by addressing some of the long-standing complaints that residents had about the HOA. He relaxed some of the stricter rules, such as the restrictions on holiday decorations and lawn ornaments. He also made it easier for residents to get approval for home improvement projects. He focused on improving the neighborhood's infrastructure. He organized a community cleanup day, where residents worked together to remove trash and debris from the streets and parks. He also secured funding to repair the sidewalks and repave the roads. He made a point of being visible and accessible to the community. He attended every neighborhood event, listened to residents' concerns, and responded to their questions promptly. He also held regular town hall meetings to discuss important issues and gather feedback. One of his most successful initiatives was the creation of a neighborhood watch program. He recruited volunteers to patrol the streets and report any suspicious activity to the police. The program helped to reduce crime and make residents feel safer. He also worked to promote a sense of community spirit. He organized potlucks, block parties, and holiday celebrations. He encouraged residents to get to know their neighbors and to support local businesses. Slowly but surely, Maple Creek began to transform. The once divided community became a more welcoming and inclusive place. Residents started to trust each other again, and they took pride in their neighborhood. One evening, Marcus was walking through the park when he saw a group of children playing together. They were laughing and smiling, and they seemed to be having a great time. Marcus smiled. This was what he had been working for. He had helped to create a community where people could feel safe, happy, and connected. He sat down on a bench and watched the children play. He thought about his aunt and the promise he had made to her. He knew that she would be proud of what he had accomplished. He had not only exposed the corruption in the HOA, but he had also helped to rebuild the community from the ground up. As the sun set over Maple Creek, Marcus felt a sense of peace and contentment. He was finally home. He had found his purpose, and he was making a difference in the world. The phone was quiet for once. There were no emergencies. There were no complaints. There was only peace and quiet. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was ready for whatever the future held. He was Marcus Miller, the HOA president of Maple Creek, and he was here to stay. He was ready to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He was ready to relax. He was ready to finally grow those prize-winning tomatoes. The future looked bright. Marcus's sense of peace was shattered a few weeks later when he received a series of anonymous letters. The letters accused him of being a tyrant, a liar, and a thief. They claimed that he had framed Karen and that he was using his position to enrich himself. Marcus knew that Karen was behind the letters. Even though she was banned from Maple Creek, she was still finding ways to harass him and undermine his efforts. He ignored the letters at first, hoping that they would eventually stop. But they kept coming, and they became increasingly threatening. He also noticed that a small group of residents were becoming increasingly hostile towards him. They criticized his decisions at HOA meetings, spread rumors about him online, and even vandalized his property. Marcus realized that Karen had managed to rally a small but vocal group of supporters who still believed her version of events. These individuals were resistant to change and suspicious of Marcus's motives. He knew he had to address the situation before it escalated further. He decided to hold a special town hall meeting to address the rumors and accusations. He invited all the residents of Maple Creek to attend the meeting. He also invited a representative from the police department and the HOA's attorney. At the meeting, Marcus presented evidence to refute the rumors and accusations. He showed how the HOA's finances had improved under his leadership and how he was working to serve the best interests of the community. The police representative explained that Karen had been warned about harassing Marcus and that she could face arrest if she continued. The HOA's attorney explained the legal ramifications of spreading false information. Most of the residents were convinced by Marcus's presentation. They expressed their support for him and condemned Karen's actions. However, a small group of Karen's supporters remained unconvinced. They continued to heckle Marcus and spread rumors. Marcus remained calm and composed. He patiently answered their questions and addressed their concerns. He refused to be drawn into a shouting match. Eventually, the meeting ended, and most of the residents left feeling reassured. However, Marcus knew that he hadn't won everyone over. He knew that Karen's supporters would continue to resist his efforts. He sighed. It seemed that the fight for Maple Creek was never truly over. There would always be challenges to overcome and obstacles to overcome. But he was determined to persevere. He was Marcus Miller, the HOA president of Maple Creek, and he was here to stay. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He knew he would continue to be a good neighbor and lead Maple Creek to greatness. He was a good man, and he would never stop fighting for what was right. He was not afraid. Despite the continued efforts of Karen and her small band of loyalists, the overwhelming majority of Maple Creek residents were firmly on Marcus's side. They saw firsthand the positive changes he was making in the community. They appreciated his honesty, his transparency, and his dedication to serving their best interests. The Neighborhood Watch program was a resounding success. Crime rates had plummeted, and residents felt safer than ever before. The community garden was thriving, providing fresh produce for those in need. The potlucks, block parties, and holiday celebrations were bringing people together and fostering a strong sense of community spirit. Even the stricter HOA rules that Marcus had initially relaxed were being revisited with community input, finding a balance between individual expression and neighborhood standards. The residents were actively participating in shaping the future of their community. One day, Marcus was working in the community garden when he was approached by Mr. Henderson, the former HOA president. Mr. Henderson had initially been skeptical of Marcus, but he had come to appreciate his leadership. "Mr. Miller," Mr. Henderson said, "I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for Maple Creek. You've turned this community around." Marcus smiled. "It wasn't just me, Mr. Henderson. It was everyone. We all worked together to make this happen." Mr. Henderson nodded. "That's true. But you were the one who brought us all together. You were the one who inspired us to believe in ourselves." Marcus was touched by Mr. Henderson's words. He realized that he had not only rebuilt the community but also inspired its residents to become better citizens. As the months passed, Karen's influence continued to wane. Her supporters gradually abandoned her, realizing that she was fighting a losing battle. They saw that Marcus was a good leader and that Maple Creek was thriving under his direction. Even Mrs. Gable, who had initially been afraid of Karen, started to warm up to Marcus. She began attending the community events and participating in the Neighborhood Watch program. One evening, Marcus was walking down the street when he saw Mrs. Gable sitting on her porch. He walked over to say hello. "Mr. Miller," Mrs. Gable said, "I just wanted to apologize for the way I treated you when you first moved in. I was wrong about you." Marcus smiled. It's okay, Mrs. Gable. We all make mistakes. Mrs. Gable reached out and took Marcus's hand. You're a good man, Mr. Miller, she said. You're the best thing that's ever happened to Maple Creek. Marcus squeezed Mrs. Gable's hand. He knew that he had finally won over the entire community. He had silenced the doubters, and he had proven that he was a true leader. Maple Creek was his home, and he was here to stay. The peace was settling, and all was well. Marcus was ready to face the future. He felt strong and confident. There were no more battles to fight. All was well. He smiled to himself and looked forward to a long rest. He deserved it. He had earned it. He was happy. He was content. He was free. Years passed. Maple Creek continued to thrive under Marcus's leadership. The community garden blossomed, the neighborhood watch remained vigilant, and the spirit of unity grew stronger each day. Marcus, now a seasoned HOA president, had truly transformed the neighborhood into a place where everyone felt safe, valued, and connected. One crisp autumn afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected letter. It was postmarked from a town several states away and bore a familiar name, Karen Davis. He hesitated before opening it, a knot forming in his stomach. He hadn't heard from Karen in years, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. But curiosity got the better of him, and he carefully tore open the envelope. The letter was handwritten, the script shaky and uneven. It began with an apology. Mr. Miller, Karen wrote, I know that nothing I can say will undo the harm I caused you and the residents of Maple Creek. But I want to say that I am truly sorry for my actions. She went on to explain that she had spent the years since her conviction reflecting on her behavior and the mistakes she had made. She admitted that she had been driven by a need for control and a fear of change, and that she had allowed those emotions to cloud her judgment. I understand now that I was wrong to accuse you of being a squatter and to try to undermine your efforts to improve the community, she wrote. You were a good man, Mr. Miller, and I was blinded by my own ego. She concluded the letter by asking for forgiveness. I don't expect you to forgive me, she wrote, but I hope that you can at least understand why I did what I did. I wish you and the residents of Maple Creek all the best. Marcus read the letter several times, his heart filled with a mixture of emotions. He felt a sense of satisfaction that Karen had finally acknowledged her wrongdoing. He also felt a pang of sympathy for her. He knew that she had suffered a great deal as a result of her actions. He decided to write back to Karen. He thanked her for her apology and told her that he appreciated her honesty. He also told her that he forgave her. I believe that everyone deserves a second chance, he wrote. I hope that you can use this opportunity to rebuild your life and make amends for your mistakes. He mailed the letter and then went outside to work in the community garden. As he tended to the tomato plants, he thought about Karen and the journey that they had both taken. He realized that even though they had started out as enemies, they had both learned valuable lessons from their experiences. He knew that he could never completely forget what had happened in Maple Creek, but he was grateful for the opportunity to have made a positive difference in the community. And he was at peace, knowing that he had done everything he could to make things right. Karen's apology, though delayed, finally allowed closure. Marcus turned back to his garden, ready for a quiet afternoon. His phone was turned off. He was finally content. As Marcus tended to his tomato plants, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey he had undertaken in Maple Creek. It had been a long and arduous one, filled with conflict, betrayal, and hardship. But it had also been a journey of growth, resilience, and ultimately, triumph. He thought about his aunt and the promise he had made to her. He had honored that promise, exposing the corruption that had plagued the HOA and restoring integrity to the community. He had also created a better future for the residents of Maple Creek, a future filled with hope, opportunity, and a strong sense of belonging. He realized that the key to his success had been transparency and community involvement. By opening up the HOA's finances and decision-making processes to the residents, he had empowered them to take ownership of their community and to work together to create a better future. He had also learned the importance of forgiveness. By forgiving Karen, he had not only freed her from the burden of her past mistakes but also freed himself from the bitterness and resentment that had consumed him for so long. The neighborhood, once fractured by distrust and division, had begun to heal. Residents were now more likely to communicate with each other, to support each other, and to work together to solve problems. The spirit of unity had been restored, and Maple Creek was once again a thriving and harmonious community. Marcus knew that there would always be challenges to overcome and obstacles to overcome. But he was confident that the residents of Maple Creek were well equipped to face those challenges together. They had learned the importance of transparency, community involvement, and forgiveness. They had also learned the power of hope and resilience. He smiled as he surveyed the community garden. The tomato plants were thriving, bearing the fruits of their labor. The children were playing together, laughing and smiling. The residents were working together, building a better future for themselves and their families. Marcus knew that he had made a difference in Maple Creek. He had helped to create a community where people could feel safe, happy, and connected. He had fulfilled his promise to his aunt, and he had found his purpose in life. He was content. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was the local news station. They wanted to interview him about his success in turning around Maple Creek. Marcus chuckled. He had become a local celebrity. He politely declined the interview. He didn't need the publicity. He was happy with his life, and he was content to continue serving the community in his own quiet way. He was Marcus Miller, the HOA president of Maple Creek, and he was here to stay. The town was better because of him. He was proud of his work. He would continue to serve the community as long as he could. He was a good man, and he would continue to do good things. He was not afraid. He was ready for whatever came next. He walked back to his house, the setting sun warming his face. He was home. He was at peace. He was finally happy. The future was bright. He was ready to grow those prize-winning tomatoes. Marcus continued to serve as the HOA president of Maple Creek for many years, his dedication unwavering, his commitment to the community absolute. Each year, he was re-elected by a landslide, the residents recognizing and appreciating his tireless efforts to make their neighborhood a better place to live. He never forgot the lessons he had learned from his experiences with Karen and the corrupt HOA board. He remained vigilant against any signs of mismanagement or abuse of power, ensuring that the HOA remained transparent and accountable to the residents. He also continued to champion community involvement, encouraging residents to participate in the decision-making process and to take ownership of their neighborhood. He organized regular town hall meetings, community cleanup days, and social events, fostering a strong sense of unity and belonging. He made a special effort to reach out to new residents, welcoming them to the community and helping them to get involved. He remembered how difficult it had been for him when he first moved into Maple Creek, and he didn't want anyone else to experience the same isolation and suspicion. He created a mentoring program, pairing new residents with longtime residents who could show them the ropes and help them to integrate into the community. He also established a welcome center, where new residents could find information about the neighborhood, the HOA, and local businesses. His efforts paid off. Maple Creek became known as one of the most welcoming and inclusive communities in the region. People from all walks of life were drawn to the neighborhood, eager to experience its strong sense of community spirit and its commitment to transparency and accountability. Marcus's leadership extended beyond the HOA. He became involved in local politics, advocating for policies that would benefit the community. He served on several committees and boards, working to improve the schools, the parks, and the local economy. He also became a mentor to other HOA leaders, sharing his experiences and insights with them. He helped them to create more transparent and accountable organizations and to foster stronger relationships with their residents. Marcus's legacy extended far beyond Maple Creek. He became a role model for community leaders everywhere, demonstrating the power of transparency, community involvement, and forgiveness in building a better future. And, yes, he finally grew those prize-winning tomatoes. They were the envy of the entire neighborhood, a symbol of his hard work, his dedication, and his unwavering commitment to Maple Creek. They won blue ribbons at the county fair year after year. He shared them with everyone, of course. He was that kind of guy. As he grew older, Marcus eventually decided to retire from his role as HOA president. He knew that he had left Maple Creek in good hands and that the community would continue to thrive long after he was gone. He smiled. He had done his job. He had made a difference. He had found his purpose. He sat on his porch, watching the sunset, a contented smile on his face. He was Marcus Miller, the former HOA president of Maple Creek, and he was finally at peace. He knew that his legacy would live on.